What is up, ladies and gentlemen of YouTube? You're with Budget Monk, and welcome to a new tradition here on my YouTube channel. I'm hoping that this series and more series to come in the future kind of resembles some content to fill the gaps here over my YouTube channel, because I know we've certainly been lacking that. What I have planned for these series is basically a prelude video before I begin an ambitious goal or challenge over on my live streams to basically inform you guys to exactly what the goal is, and also other insights like my thoughts, my ideas on how actually to achieve those goals. In some cases, it could be pretty elaborate, and I hope that my thoughts, my ideas, some of which might be unique, even if we end up having a failure in the end, that basically resembles content in the meantime. And secondly, I wish for the series to basically be a serious effort at actually updating those of you who are unable to hang out with me on a daily basis over on the live stream as to how my series, or my stream rather, is going. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoy that something new and just enjoy the updates in general. So with that out of the way, let's talk about what I have planned for you guys here in the future to come. I have a dream, guys. I have a dream. Most recently, the most ambitious thing I have ever achieved was achieved about a month ago, and that essentially was a one culture, uniting the entire world under one culture. We began as Austria, and the designated culture that occupied every single province in the world was Roman. We achieved this on very hard difficulty. We also achieved it with no save scumming. Now, I'm the type of player who actually has an aversion to elaborate exploits, because I personally feel like it takes the fun out of the game. So it was relatively exploit free as well. However, you could suggest that Diplo banking is an exploit in the sense that it was never intended to be utilized in that manner. And Diplo banking, if you are not familiar, is basically when you invest your Diplo points to convert a province. However, that can therefore be refunded for 100% of those points as long as it does not complete more than 10% of the conversion. So what you're able to do is to go over your capacity of Diplo points by actually investing them in converting provinces, which you actually cancel and juggle later on throughout the course of the game in order to hoard Diplo points in this area of converted provinces in the meantime. The reason you do that is because you can stack more cultural conversion reduction bonuses the later you get into the game, most prominently the Enlightenment, which is the final institute which needs to be introduced to your country. Now, with that being said, my dream is to actually do a one culture without Diplo banking. So as you guys know, I did in fact achieve that goal, and the entire playthrough is over on my backup channel, which is basically where I rip live streams one for one so that people can basically watch them as they're archived there over on Budget Monk Live Archive. There will be a link down below in the comment section. Now, with that being said, we're going to go ahead and look. I'm going to explain briefly the methodology that I used to overcome some of the obstacles in order to achieve my goals in the previous run. Basically, one of the issue is the New World. This is a huge issue because currently, in this current dynamic of the game, your subjects out in the New World do not convert provinces. They don't care. In many cases, they will accept the culture. So in order to actually micromanage the New World and convert these provinces, you cannot have colonial nations form, which means you need to actually move your capital to the New World or any colonial region in order to prevent colonial nations from forming so that you can manually convert the provinces. This is a huge issue to overcome because they've currently made it extremely difficult to actually move your capital. There's only very niche circumstances in which you can move your capital. One of which means you cannot have a state or any neighboring states around your capital city. Absolutely awkward. You also need to have over 50% of your total development on the desired continent in which you wish to move your capital. So it is actually extremely difficult for most nations to actually have a serious, good, productive game and also have the ability to move the capital to the New World. That alone is pretty hideous. challenging to achieve. I opted to use, rather than a nation like Karaman that has a cultural conversion cost reduction, I opted to use an absolute savage powerhouse of a nation, Austria. And the method that we actually used, which is genius if I do say so myself, is we did a standard Holy Roman Empire try-hard game in which I have a lot of experience. I actually manually integrated any member in which was actually required to form the Roman Empire, aka the Italian or the French region. But this did allow me to subjugate through the revoke privilege all of the Germanic and Czech region, etc. We also used tryhard exploits to massively expand the empire, incorporating Poland and Denmark, etc., into the empire, and ultimately feeding them all of Europe and beyond, with the exception of the provinces required to form Rome. At the point in which we occupy all of the provinces required to form Rome, when you form Rome, it actually removes all of your territory from the Holy Roman Empire, which means we actually left the empire. So we were in a state in which we had subjugated via revoke privilegia, if I can pronounce that, but we also were no longer a member of the Holy Roman Empire. By no longer being a member of the Holy Roman Empire, we were able to move our capital around, which you're otherwise unable to do. You're unable to remove it outside of the empire. I then proceeded to hand off all of Europe to our subjects who were members of the Holy Roman Empire surrounding our capital city, which allowed me to, in turn, move my capital to the New World. Naturally, at this stage of the game, I basically had Rome and provinces in the New World, our colonies. However, we still had the maximum capacity of owning all of Europe, if that makes sense, because the final reform unites all of the Holy Roman Empire. So we were able to hand off land without losing land, if that makes sense. Quite ingenious, if I do say so myself, and it worked out in the grand scheme of things. Now, I'm planning to do this via no Diplo banking. And initially, I thought that theoretically it would be possible if we play Karaman. Why? Because Karaman has 20% cultural cost reduction, which means that this is kind of the equivalent of owning the Enlightenment, which is the final institute, which reduces cultural conversion cost by 25%. Because in my runs, I had the Diplo points. We actually had more issues to overcome, like fleshing out the entire world, colonizing the entire world, and therefore making it your culture via colonies. Other variables were actually more challenging than having the raw Diplo points. So I felt as though if we did it as Karaman, obviously a more challenging and sort of weaker nation, at least we have that modifier. However, to be honest, guys, on very hard difficulty, no save scums, etc., I'm very intimidated by Karaman, and I don't feel like I can actually pull it off. So I have opted to play a very powerful nation, Castile, and we will be attempting to do this as Castile. Now, let's talk about overcoming some of the obstacles, like moving our capital to the New World, and exactly how I plan to deal with those situations. All right, lads, so obviously we're going to be playing as Nation of Castile, and we need to figure out ideas, tactics to overcome some of our obstacles, like moving our capital to the New World. Let me talk about another obstacle. I basically want to have supreme control over the colonies of the New World, which I will elaborate on, and that includes against my sort of pseudo-rival, Portugal, who is obviously an early colonizer. We do plan to PU Portugal, and the method in which you use that is the mission tree. All you require is to own this land, whether directly or indirectly via a non-tributary subject, aka the Iberian wedding. That's what we're hoping for. That allows you to take the PU Casus Belli over Portugal and take them out in one foul swoop. However, you're unable to attack the colonies of your own subject. So if we're wanting that supreme domination of the entire New World, I have to PU Portugal before he takes colonial ideas. So this was what I might consider an RNG variable that I was concerned about how early we could get the Iberian wedding. However, I have a shrewd idea which should eliminate this being any kind of threat. What I plan to do while we basically rush our colonial ideas in the beginning of the game, obviously pretty efficiently spending our monarch points taking standard exploration and expansion ideas, I plan to feed Portugal into North Africa and also Grenada. Fun fact, a lot of people seem to think that you need to own Granada in order to form Spain diplomatically. However, all you need to do is have any Christian own it. That is the um, requirements that need to be filled, is to have it owned by Christians, including yourself, right? So people seem to think it's yourself. I plan to feed Portugal these provinces, which he desires, as well as all of North Africa, and that's going to basically bastardize him. It's going to put him behind in his admin technology and therefore postpone him colonizing. That's going to buy me enough time, hopefully, to acquire the Iberian wedding and then PU him. Once a nation is a subject, they no longer will take colonial ideas. So we're going to basically productively, obviously, feed Portugal, meaning it's not going to cost me Diplo points to give him the provinces. It's not going to cost me a gross expansion or admin or anything like that, coring up the provinces. He will do all the work, and we will take him out in one foul swoop with that PUCB, which is also hitting two birds with one stone, because he's going to be unable to colonize as he won't have colonial ideas. Now, with that being said, if we make more than 4 colonies in any region, obviously a colonial nation will be formed. So with that in mind, what I'm going to attempt to do is any area, colonial region that is inside of North America, I'm going to begin colonizing 4 at a time. So we'll complete 4 in the Caribbean, most likely, and moving on to other areas, including Panama, by the way. Panama is Colombia, but the province itself, Panama, is North America. It is the most southern North American province in the game, I believe, unless you consider that to be more southern. But I mean most down towards South America. And what you can do is drop 1, 2, 3, and 4, all which I believe are in the Panama region, and then more in the Mexican region. However, by using the adjacent bonus here, the port here, and then the adjacent bonus, this is going to give me colonial range to have the ability to go up to California and Alaska as well. So we're going to be trying to build up our nation in the New World, or our amount of development in the New World. Now, let's talk about isolating our capital. It's quite simple and straightforward, actually, as Castile. We have the privilege of putting our capital to this province, which is inside Europe. We can freely move our capital to this province. And that, being completely isolated with no neighboring state, will then allow us to move our capital to another continent, in this case, North America. So the being surrounded by a large homeland variable will be gone if we move our capital to here. However, I actually want to colonize this province to go down the colonial tree as Castile in the mission tree, because you get settlers, for example. And if we colonize this counts as a quote-unquote large homeland, right? Because we now have the whole state. So another shrewd idea here is we're going to colonize this province initially. I'm going to move my capital to this province, and then so that we've completed our missions, and then I'm going to hand off this province, because Portugal will now be our subject, right, which we've already established, and he's adjacent to Portugal, isolating our capital and allowing us to move our capital to the New World if we have more development in North America. So obviously doing 4 colonies at a time per region, it's going to be pretty hard to actually have more development. Obviously, I'm not going to have expanded. There is a couple tactics we can exploit, one of which is going to be, of course, you can use the form Spain diplomatically, even if Aragon is larger than his current state. He begins with 22 provinces, and you can use the Iberian wedding or form Spain diplomatically if he has less than 32 provinces, meaning we can give him 9 provinces, and that includes my own territory if I deem it necessary. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I could give him that entire line there, for example, and more. And of course, by hitting the Form Spain button, we inherit it all again. So it didn't really come at any serious consequence. That is a tactic to diminish my development in Europe, but also an option that we have is to basically annex Mexican provinces. Now, naturally, if you own 5 or more cores in Mexico, then the colonial nation New Spain will form. However, you cannot core the actual land up. Unfortunately, this does give you overextension, unlike some areas in the New World. However, yeah, it's an option to, go up nearer to 100% overextension, or God forbid, even over. But it does count as development, and then I will have the ability to move my capital to an actual cored up colony in the New World. So pretty interesting stuff, guys. I hope you are intrigued by that, stimulated, if you will, and let's move on to other subjects. So before I forget, I do want to say, like I said, I want to, once we're out in the New World, I'm going to be trying to dominate, like 360-degree control the entire New World. And one thing that's going to be really interesting, guys, is when our capital is in the New World, we will technically count as a New World nation. Even forming Spain does not move your capital. Interesting, huh? Now, what that means is, say England begins colonizing the 13 colonies, the East Coast. Well, as a New World nation, you can actually declare war on their newly formed colonial nation without going to war with their overlord. So I plan to basically use French, English, maybe Scottish, Norwegian at a later date, colonies to flesh out the New World faster for myself, if that makes sense. And I wish to basically use the exterior of the New World to colonize the entire thing and box everybody out so I have supreme influence. The next objective will be to rush the natives to the best of my ability. And upon converting the entire New World to Roman, once the separatism has disappeared, I just said Roman when I should have said Castilian. That's a bit of a spoiler, I suppose. I hope that my exploits over in Europe by that time have fulfilled the requirements to form Rome. Upon forming Rome, we've converted the entire New World to Castilian, and upon forming Rome, the entire New World will become Roman culture. If we kill the natives and we box the colonists out, then there will be nothing but Roman culture in the New World and uncolonized land. Upon forming Rome, our capital will bounce to Rome itself. We will become Europeans once again, and our entire exploits out in the New World will be released as colonial nations, respectively. So that is basically the plan at this stage. It will kind of be a traditional, powerful European nation with ridiculous, including Australia, by the way. We need to get that done as well. Colonial exploits, including the trade, the treasure fleets, and of course the force limit, the naval force limit in particular, which is generated through the colonial nations. Pretty interesting stuff. I'm hyped for it. It's a bit of a roundabout manner of doing things, and in my opinion, it's going to be interesting to see how things go. But it's a good way to achieve our ends without, and playing as a powerful nation like Castile without making massive compromises on our strength, having a poor quality game. It is going to cost me about 200 Diplo points to move my capital, and then again, about 400 admin. I said Diplo, I mean admin points. So pretty expensive in that sense, but definitely well worth it to, really achieve our ends, hopefully. So let's talk really quickly about the actual brute force of the Diplo points and converting the world to Castilian, soon to be Roman, guys. Obviously, we're not going to be Caraman, and that is quite concerning, not getting this bonus. So we're really, high and dry without it. There is the Iberian bonus where you can actually pay 50 Diplo points in order to get 30% reduction bonus to the entire state. However, ordinarily, when you stack the modifiers, 50 is actually a lot of points, guys. If you imagine playing 50 points per area and then get in the game, it's actually not that good. It's probably better in the beginning of the game when you lack modifiers than it is at any other stage. Basically, meaning inefficient converting is going to be a little bit more efficient. However, we are at least going to be able to use the adjacent bonus, like converting a province adjacent to another province, a little bit more efficiently than I was able to in my previous one culture runs. All in all, though, it appears pretty grim. I do actually have a trick up my sleeve, however, and that is playing as Castile. There is a very niche event here. We're in the Spanish events here, and on the EU4 wiki, very niche event that some people are not aware of. And basically, this event, all it is required to trigger, the trigger conditions is that it's basically not the very beginning of the game. You require more than 25 non-colonial provinces. We will fill that requirement because we're going to be pushing our way after moving our capital to the New World towards forming Rome. You need to be Spain. That's it. The meantime to happen is 150 months, And if this was 120 months, that's 10 times 12, right? So that's basically 10 years. So we're looking at what? I don't know, about 14 years here for an average time for this to occur. And what the event actually does, believe it or not, is it actually gives your ruler a modifier until their death. And that modifier is 15%. Culture conversion cost. How about that? Yeah. So that's basically a light at the end of the tunnel to basically, if we're not Diplo banking, to stimulate our culture conversion cost reduction on the way as we go. Obviously, we're going to be going for religious and the policy between religious and influence, as well as the parliamentary bonus, and hoping if we can kind of try to time that by forming Spain at an appropriate time when we have an abundance of Diplo points and a young ruler. Time that to where we can do some serious converting during that window of opportunity. Obviously, as we get nearer to the end of the game with the Enlightenment as well, we can really pick up the pace. So it's an interesting one, guys. That's basically my thoughts and goals. So some people might be wondering which ideas are we going to be taking. We are going to be taking Castilian ideas and actually maintaining Castilian ideas for the entire game. I'm not going to be switching to Spanish or Roman for that matter. As far as military bonuses, basically Castile has the 15% moral of armies. The reduced yearly army tradition is pretty good, but this is the main modifier to the army. It's a strong one, but it's the only one they have, so that is what it is. It's really the missionary and the missionary strength, which for me is huge. It is so difficult in this patch to basically one faith, let alone one culture. Obviously, one faith is kind of a precursor to one culture because the provinces need to be your religion in order to be converted. And this is huge as a Catholic. We're going to need this. Production efficiency is pretty good. Colonist is obviously damn good for what we have planned. Reputation's okay. We're going to be doing a lot of integrating nations as Castile into Spain. They get PUs through the roof, so reputation's pretty good. Chance in new areas, it is what it is. Institution speed is decent to embrace the Enlightenment in particular at earlier date. Monthly autonomy is okay, and the global settler is also really, really good for what we actually have planned. And so we're going to be keeping Castilian ideas there, just showing it off before we wrap up this video. Alrighty, lads. So we're going to do a quick rundown of my ideas, what I have planned, and which order we're going to be taking them. We're going to be doing a classic colonial dominance game. So we're going to be taking exploration first, followed up by expansion. Obviously, the policy here initially upon completing is going to give us increased settlers. And with Castile, we will have a grand total of 4 colonists. Even if we become a parliament, we have the option maybe to take a 5th colonist periodically, although it's going to be quite contested. The different variables that we're going to want, including cultural conversion, cost reduction, etc. Next up, I'm going to be fitting in offensive. The reason we're going offensive, personally, I think it's probably the best overall idea group because the 20% force limit is amazing if you're affluent. Hopefully we're affluent with all of our colonies and so on. But it gives you the discipline, the good generals, and more importantly than anything else, the siege ability. Even if you do not think this is very good, it is the siege ability is what I consider to be a gap closer. It's going to allow us to annex, conquer the world at a faster rate. It's huge and a must-have. So next up, we're going to be going for religious. I wish, guys, that we could get this Deus Vault earlier. You know we like to Deus Vault people around these here parts. We like to Deus Vault them to the left and to the right, all over the place. And it's going to be painful. I know it is already lacking a good CB like that. Of course, still a ways away from imperialism at this stage. And yeah, it's a must-have. But this idea group is a must-have because the cultural conversion cost reduction. Speaking of which, so is influence. There is a policy with religious of 20% cultural conversion cost reduction. So remember, this is a one culture we're going for. Must-have here and here. Next up, I suspect, you need quite some foresight to plan out your ideas like this, but we're going to be going for quality. Quality, just an overall very good idea. Obviously, weaker if your force limit is very low, but we should, let's say we formed Rome by this stage, we should have insane force limit due to our colonial nations. So our force limit is going to be very high and our affluence is going to be very high, and we want to fund that with stronger units. But if you go ahead and look at the policy here, the Military Zeal Act, it gives you moral of armies and siege ability. That's more siege ability, meaning faster. That's a great policy here. Faster conquering
the world. At this stage, we're getting pretty late in the game. I'm not too worried about these final ideas. I would really like diplomatic for the war school cost reduction, but these all these monarch points, the Diplo points, should be going to converting the world to our culture at this stage. So probably the next big move we're going to do is basically abandon diplomatic and be refunded 10% of the points that we put into that. I said diplomatic, I mean exploration. Freeing up the slot because we probably have done our job. We still will have 3 colonists, and we've probably done a good job exploring and cracking down on all the colonies at this stage. Switch it out for admin there and invest just enough to reduce the core reduction cost by 25% due to adaptability to help us close the gap on the rest of the world. The rest is a little bit of fluff and flavor, not that relevant. I hope you guys, that breaks it down for you guys, and that's it.
All right, lads, that's it. That is the breaking it down video, the introduction to prelude to this series. I'm going to be keeping you guys updated. I hope you guys are hyped and excited, and I hope you guys are excited for, I don't know, the content. It is not the most stimulating content ever, but this is going to be a new tradition here on my channel where I break things down and I update you as it goes, trying to do it with a bit of class and quality as well. I appreciate you guys. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.